A crown is not a gift. It is a cage forged from gold and expectation, and it was placed upon my head when I was still too small to bear its weight. They say a king is chosen by God, but I have come to believe we are chosen by circumstance, by the cold and indifferent turning of fate. My story is not one of simple triumph, but of the perilous tightrope walk between the man I was and the king I was meant to be, a walk where a single misstep can send an entire kingdom tumbling into darkness. It is a lesson carved in a stone of my own tomb, a warning that the heaviest burdens we carry are not the jewels on our brow, but the griefs we refuse to set down. My reign began in the shadow of giants. My father, the valiant prince, was a legend whose armor I could never hope to fill, and his father, the old Lion King, had ruled for so long that the realm itself seemed to breathe with his authority. But they were both gone, and I, a boy of 10, was left to inherit the storm. I sat on a throne too large for my frame, a silent observer in my own court, while my powerful uncles, chief among them the calculating Lord Valerius, Duke of Kenwood, ruled in my name. They saw a pawn, a symbol to be polished and displayed, while they played their great game of power. I learned early that a king's voice is meaningless without the strength to make it heard, and I vowed that one day my voice would be the only one that mattered. My first true test came not from the whispers of the court, but from the roar of the common man. The great uprising of my 14th year was a tidal wave of fire and fury that swept across the land, a desperate cry from those crushed beneath the heel of taxes and toil. While my council of lords hid behind castle walls, something inside me, a spark of the lion's blood I carried, refused to cower. I rode out to face the raging mob, a boy on a war horse, and I met their anger not with steel, but with words. I looked into their eyes, I heard their grievances, and I gave them my solemn promise of reform, of justice. In that moment, I felt the true power of a king, not to command, but to connect. The rebellion subsided, pacified by the word of a boy, but a king's promises are currency, and my counsel soon devalued mine. The reforms were abandoned, the leaders of the uprising hunted down and executed. I was forced to break my word, and in doing so, a part of my own youthful idealism was broken with it. I learned a bitter lesson. Mercy is a luxury, and power, once asserted, must be ruthlessly maintained. As I grew into a man, I sought to reclaim the authority that was mine by birthright. I surrounded myself with friends and advisors who saw me not as a symbol, but as myself. They encouraged my love for art, for poetry, for a different kind of kingdom, one built on beauty and culture, not just conquest. But the old guard, the powerful Baron's council, led by my rivals, saw this as weakness. They saw my friends as sycophants, my patronage of the arts as wasteful decadence. They moved against me, not with armies, but with laws and accusations. In the dark assembly they called the Grim Tribunal, they systematically dismantled my inner circle, accusing my closest companions of treason. I was powerless to stop them. I watched as the men I trusted, the men who had been my brothers, were led to the executioner's block. The echo of the axe that day never left me. It hollowed me out, planting a seed of vengeance that would lie dormant for years, waiting for the right moment to grow. Then, into this world of shadows, came the light. Her name was Ilara, a princess from a distant land, and my queen. She was my sanctuary. With her, the court was transformed. The grim whispers of politics were replaced by music and laughter. We created a Camelot of our own, a brief, shimmering decade of peace. I led a successful campaign across the sea, not for glory, but for stability, and returned a respected and capable ruler. For the first time, the crown felt less like a cage and more like a mantle of purpose. Ilara taught me that a king's strength was not just in his armies, but in his heart. She was my compass, my anchor, the one person who saw the man beneath the monarchy. I believed our golden age would last forever. But forever is a lie we tell ourselves to fend off the darkness. A sudden fever stole Ilara from me, and with her last breath, the sun went out in my world. The grief was not a wave of sadness, it was a physical demolition. I tore down the manor where she died, unable to bear the sight of it. The man she had nurtured, the patient and cultured king, died with her. In his place rose a ghost, a hollowed-out monarch consumed by a cold, silent rage. The dormant seed of vengeance, watered by my tears, finally sprouted. I would make the world feel the emptiness she had left in me. My rule became absolute. My word, law. The Baron's council, The men who had humiliated me years ago were my first targets. I moved with a chilling precision, stripping them of their titles, their lands, their lives. I had finally become the all-powerful king I had dreamed of being as a boy, but I had become a tyrant to do it. My final fatal act of hubris was born of this newfound arrogance. My uncle, Lord Valerius, had died, and his vast inheritance was due to pass to his exiled son, my cousin, Lord Corvus of Bullingdon. But I saw an opportunity. I was preparing for another campaign across the sea, and my coffers were low. With a stroke of a pen, I declared Corvus a traitor and confiscated his entire legacy for the crown. It was an act of pure, unadulterated tyranny, and it was the misstep that sent my kingdom into the abyss. While I was away, asserting my authority in a distant land, Corvus returned, not as a supplicant, but as a liberator. The lords I had alienated, the people I had ignored, flocked to his banner. He came to reclaim his land, but the kingdom offered him the crown instead. I returned not to a loyal nation, but to an empty throne. They found me in a remote castle, abandoned by all but a handful of loyal retainers. There was no great battle, no glorious last stand. My reign ended with a quiet surrender. They imprisoned me in a cold, stone tower, and in the suffocating silence, I was left with nothing but the echoes of my life. In the end, they did not grant me the dignity of an executioner's axe. They simply let me fade away, the hunger in my belly a dull ache compared to the ravenous hunger of my regret. My tragic end did more than end a life. It shattered a sacred principle. By deposing an anointed king, my cousin Corvus had shown that the crown could be taken, not just inherited. He had opened a door that could not be closed, setting in motion the bloody cycle of rebellion and usurpation that would plague our family for generations, a conflict they would later call the War of the Cousins. So, as you stand at your own crossroads, facing your own trials, remember the story of the boy king who lost his way. Understand that true strength is not the power to command, but the wisdom to listen. It is not the ability to avenge your wounds, but the courage to heal them. Do not let your sorrow become your scepter or your pain become your throne. For if you do, you may gain the whole world, but you will build your kingdom on a foundation of ash, and in the end, you will be its only, and its loneliest, inhabitant. Thanks for watching.